And now our featured presentation. What is wrong with Easter? Easter is that time when Christians celebrate the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the atonement of Jesus for the wages of sin. Adam was told that the day he ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, he would die. Adam went against the command of God and introduced death and its penalty on mankind. For this reason, flesh must die because flesh sin. However, mankind cannot die for himself or another person to pay the wages of sin. Therefore, God put on flesh so that a sinless flesh would die for sinful flesh. This death, mankind's atonement, has lost significant portions of its meaning because of Easter. The first thing that is wrong with Easter is the name Easter. Easter is the evolved name of the pagan goddess of fertility. She is also called Astaroth and Aster. In a confrontation between Jeremiah and the Israelites, the people argued that they had better days when they worshipped this queen of heaven, and Jeremiah told them that God was displeased with them. Let's listen to the people. But we will certainly do whatsoever thing goeth forth out of our mouth, to burn incense unto the queen of heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings, and our princes, in the cities of Judah, and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of victuals, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense to the queen of heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things, and have been consumed by the sword and by the famine. And when we burned incense to the queen of heaven, and poured out drink offerings unto her, did we make her cakes to worship her, and pour out drink offerings unto her without our men? Read Jeremiah chapter 44, verses 17 to 22 and verse 25. While it is true that Christianity does not acknowledge nor worship Easter, the goddess, it is also true that Christians have not taken the time to separate the practices of Easter from the atonement of Jesus. Easter celebration is not a Christian holiday, but because the Jewish Passover occurred at the same time pagans celebrate Easter, Christians mistakenly call the Atonement of Christ Easter. The distinction between these two celebrations was made by Luke. Let's listen. And because he, Herod, saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Then were the days of unleavened bread, the Jewish Passover. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. Acts 12, verses 3 and 4. According to Luke, both holy days were happening at the same time. With respect to his goddess, Herod would not kill Peter until after Easter, Herod's holy day. Somewhere in history, Christians were led to believe that the atonement of Christ is called Easter. It appears that in the city of Ephesus, the goddess Easter, the queen of heaven, was called Diana, and Paul was chastised by her worshippers. Let's listen. For a certain man named Demetrius, a silversmith, which made silver shrines for Diana, brought no small gain unto the craftsmen, whom he called together with workmen of like occupation, and said, Sirs, ye know that by this craft we have our wealth. Moreover, ye see and hear that not alone at Ephesus, but almost throughout all Asia, this Paul had persuaded and turned away many people, saying that there be no gods which are made with hands. So that not only this our craft is in danger to be set at naught, but also that the temple of the great goddess Diana should be despised, and her magnificence should be destroyed, whom all Asia and the world worshipeth. And when they heard these things, they were full of wrath and cried out, saying, Great is Diana of the Ephesians. And the whole city was filled with confusion. And having caught Gaius and Aristarchus, men of Macedonia, Paul's companion in travel, they rushed with one accord into the theater. And when Paul would have entered in unto the people, the disciples suffered him not. And certain of the chief of Asia, which were his friends, sent unto him, desiring him that he would not adventure himself into the theater. Some thereof cried one thing, and some another, for the assembly was confused, and the more part knew not wherefore they were come together. And they drew Alexander out of the multitude, the Jews putting him forward. And Alexander beckoned with the hand, and would have made his defense unto the people. But when they knew that he was a Jew, all with one voice, about the space of 2 hours cried, Great is Diana of the Ephesians. And when the town clerk had appeased the people, he said, Ye men of Ephesus, what man is there that knoweth not how that the city of the Ephesians is a worshipper of the great goddess Diana, and of the image that fell from Jupiter? Acts 19:24-35. Like Paul, informed Christians must help others to know that the atonement of Jesus is not Easter. These are 2 different gods. Easter and the crucified Christ are not the same. The second thing that is wrong with Easter is Ash Wednesday. Ash Wednesday is another holy day introduced into Christianity by Roman Catholicism. Palm leaves, which were kept and dried from the previous year, were burnt, and the ash was used as ink to draw a cross on the faces of those who were repenting of their sins. In Roman Catholicism, Ash Wednesday became the Day of Atonement, a day set aside by those who believed and depended on the priest to forgive them of their confessed sins. In Christianity, the only person who can forgive sin is Jesus, and there's no mediator between man and God. Christians innocently and ignorantly practice Ash Wednesday. They don't even know that for Ash Wednesday to be Ash Wednesday, they need the priest to mark their foreheads with the ash. The third thing that is wrong with Easter is Lent. In order to take the communion, penitent Roman Catholics who have been absolved of their sins must prepare themselves through fasting for 40 days before the communion is taken. Between Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, this is called Lent. The use of 40 days is to reflect Christ's days of fasting and suffering. However, Jesus was not suffering during his fast. And secondly, he was not crucified at the end of his fasting. Further, counting from Ash Wednesday to Good Friday is not 40 days. It is more. To hide that problem, Roman Catholicism, the perpetrator, asked for Sundays to be subtracted to arrive at 40 days. Common sense, however, informs us that those 40 days of fasting must be days without breaks. If you break each Sunday and resume each Monday, then it's not 40 days of fasting. Misguided Christians, however, complicate the erroneous teaching by fasting from items they call pleasure, like watching movies, listening to the radio, sexual relationships, eating meat, and many more things. If the 40 days of fasting reflects Christ's fasting, what pleasure was Christ giving up? The Bible tells us that after his fasting and temptation, he began his 3.5 years of ministry. Let's listen to the Bible. And Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit into Galilee, and there went out a fame of him throughout all the region round about. And he taught in their synagogues, being glorified of all. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, he went in to the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read. And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Luke 4:14-19. Christ atoned for our sins approximately 3.5 years after his 40 days of consistent fasting. He wasn't crucified the day after. Therefore, Christ met with his disciples to establish the Holy Communion 3.5 years after his fasting, not 40 days. Incidentally, Roman Catholicism only abstained from eating meat on Fridays, not for the 40 days. The fourth thing that is wrong with Easter is Good Friday. Regarding his death, burial, and resurrection, Jesus said, "For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Matthew 12, verse 40. Jesus answered and said unto them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." John 2, verse 19. Christians should preserve the testimony of Jesus and the evidence of his bodily death. Good Friday's death to the third-day resurrection cannot account for 3 days and 3 nights from the Western world's method of timekeeping. Christ died in Jerusalem. Therefore, the 3 days and 3 nights must be counted using a Jewish clock. This fact is known by the scholars of Roman Catholicism. Therefore, they also introduced another day called Holy Thursday. So, what is holy about Thursday and is good on Good Friday? Well, because we're talking about the crucifixion, the answer must be the death of Jesus. In the Jewish system of recognizing time, the day begins at 6 p.m. and ends at 6 p.m. the following day, sunset to sunset. Therefore, 6 p.m. Thursday evening would be the beginning of Friday, which would end at 6 p.m. Friday evening. 6 p.m. Friday evening would be the beginning of Saturday, which would end at 6 p.m. Saturday evening. 6 p.m. Saturday evening would be the beginning of Sunday, which would end at 6 p.m. Sunday evening. And Christ rose early on Sunday, the first day. This is the only way to arrive at 3 days and 3 nights. The fifth thing that is wrong with Easter is the Easter Bunny. Somehow, the energetic and prolific reproductivity of the rabbit has found its way into the atonement of Jesus by way of Easter. Although the ear of the rabbit is the logo of pornographic playboys, some Christian ministers and believers cannot complete Easter without hunting for Easter eggs. Nicodemus was told that he had to be born again spiritually to become a son of God. Instead of using the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus to bring sinners into the born-again experience, misguided church leaders are hunting eggs laid by the pagan goddess Easter. The sixth thing that is wrong with Easter is the Easter Bun. Christians are told to abstain from eating meat during the Roman Catholics' Lenten season. Eating fish, cheese, and buns are some staple diet for the celebration of Easter, a sacrifice. It is interesting to note that when Israel celebrated the Queen of Heaven baking cake, bun, was critical in this worship. Let's listen to Jeremiah. "The children gathered wood, and the fathers kindled a fire, and the women knead dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her other gods, that they may provoke me to anger." Jeremiah 7, verse 18. This cake was a sacrificial wafer offered to the Queen of Heaven, and the Easter bunnies eaten during the 40 days of fasting for Easter celebration. Celebrating the atonement of Jesus. As Christians, we believe that through Adam, original sin entered God's creation and brought death on mankind. We further believe that the last Adam, Jesus, has atoned for sin, and as such, we celebrate the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. The Christian's token used to celebrate the atonement of Jesus is the Holy Communion, the New Covenant. Let us listen to Mark. "And as they did eat, Jesus took bread, and blessed and brake it, and gave to them, and said, Take, eat, this is my body. And he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them. And they all drank of it. And he said unto them, This is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many." Mark 14, 22-24. Then, according to Paul, "For I have received of the Lord that which also I delivered unto you, that the Lord Jesus, the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, "Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me." After the same manner also he took the cup, and when he had supped, saying, "This cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do he as often as ye drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, you do show for the Lord's death till he come. Wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread and drink this cup of the Lord unworthily shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him that eat of that bread and drink of that cup. For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. For this cause many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep." 1 Corinthians 11:23-30. These are the basic instructions given to us by Jesus and Paul about the celebration of Jesus' atonement. As Christians, we cannot celebrate Easter and the atonement. They are two different things. One is about the King of Kings, who is the Lord of Lords. The other is about a pagan goddess called the Queen of Heaven. Our King does not have a queen. Thank you for listening.